secretaries and
they're choosing these jobs. We're not pushing them in these jobs. Women don't want to travel. They don't want to be executives. Please hold your hate mail.
No, I just like
someone's going to take this on HuffPo and say, Stephen had this woman on who said they're making sandwiches. And I don't want to disappoint them, so I would kindly request now that you show them your breasts. Don't. That's the problem. She's a gamer. She would with anyone else, they'd be like, I was hoping you would just hang up. Ugh.
You had to know that I wouldn't hang up.
I know.
But no, it's like there's a difference between a career and a job, right? And I have always had jobs. And so, I mean, just a couple of weeks ago, I took the plunge and quit my job, right? So now I'm home all the time. Right now I got chicken stock boiling on the stove, right? I got dinner already planned out.
You're still doing the podcast and the YouTube deal.
I'm doing all of my stuff. I'm like talking with you tomorrow.
No, you're not married, but is it a cohabitation situation?
It is. We're common law. By law in Canada, we're technically married.
Okay. Well, that's in Quebec. The thing is, if you ever see a wedding ring, guaranteed they're English because French Canadians don't get married.
His mother, every once in a while, she's a little crazy. And I mean, she's sweet and everything, but she's a little.
Yeah, she's going to be able to see
all
this,
over the place.
There's no paywall here.
It's all right.
She just needs to click play.
But every once in a while, she'll just kind of out of the blue, we'll be talking about something else, I don't know, sports or the yard or whatever. The grass needs cutting.
Yeah.
And then she'll just kind of go, Michael, the ring is important. And
I agree with her.
Be like, what? And she'll say, the ring is important. It has to be nice and it has to be special. And the ceremony is important, Michael.
No.
Right? And I'll be like, are you under the impression that we're getting married? And because even if we were getting married, I couldn't wear a ring. It'll give me a rash. I can't wear any jewelry.
Oh no, you're sounding like one of those feminists who shuns deodorant because they always have an excuse. It's GMOs.
No, I don't have any problems with that. It's just
my wife had that when I got her white gold. It didn't give her a rash, but it actually just yellowed. It was gone because of the acidity, I guess, of the pH of her skin, and so we had to get it. We didn't end up getting platinum. We ended up getting palladium because it's more similar to white gold. But yeah, she did have a pH thing in her skin.
I might be able to do titanium. You never know. But I was just thinking, if I ever did get married, I would maybe just tattoo a Celtic knot around my finger or something like that.
I thought about that too, but then my wife was like, well, you still have to wear a ring. And now I feel naked without it. I am, that's one thing. I'm a huge advocate for marriage. Particularly, I think that women have let men off the hook a lot. And this is one thing where I think even the men's rights people, that's why I never want to play the victim thing. I always say, no, men need to elevate themselves, and so should women. That's just my belief. And however, and I believe, this is one thing I find sort of funny, the libertarian sort of circle, and I'm a Christian conservative. I'm pretty open about it, but if people want to do drugs, go ahead. If states want to do the same-sex marriage thing, go ahead. I'll just never see women and men as fundamentally interchangeable. That's why I have a problem with it from just a scientific perspective. I don't believe that two men can give everything to a child that a mom and a dad can. I don't believe two moms can give everything to a child that a dad can. And that's not hate speech. And of course, two dads are better than no parents, of course. Right?
That's right. Or one parent.
Or one parent. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. That's the single biggest economic indicator in the United States of whether you do well in school, whether you finish school, if you're a girl, whether you get pregnant outside of wedlock, whether you get teen pregnancy, whether you're violent, whether you end up in prison, whether you go to college, whether you get a good job, is there a dad in the household?
Yes.
And not only is there daddy, mommy, and his daddy married, and the stats we have say marriage. So I do find it sort of funny, and I wonder if we could find common ground here, because we have so much common ground everywhere else, where the anti-authoritarian libertarian movement, with which I probably more identify than the Christian right, as it's so called, is sort of coming around to the same basis of inalienable rights, which was a deeply Christian perspective initially, to sort of complementarianism, that men and women are different and it's okay and let's stop trying to change it. Because if you look at actually domestic abuse and you look at sort of this happiness, like you're talking about, women rating their happiness, another thing I wrote about this in Sexuality, people got really upset with me, where I talked about not having sex until we were married. Statistically, this is in sexual journals, women don't have problems attaining orgasm for women who have had one sexual partner wait till their marriage. Now, you can say it's because they don't have anything to compare it to or it's societal guilt, but these are overwhelming statistics and data.
Risk of divorce goes up the more sexual
much higher
on average.
Yeah, and I wonder if libertarians maybe sort of realize that their allies in this all along, really for the last several centuries, were sort of the Christian right who believed those truths to be self-evident. Now the data is reflecting it.
I think that essentially, I think the libertarian position on marriage would be to get the state out of it. And to like, because right now a marriage contract is a legally binding blank piece of paper that you sign, and the terms are going to be decided by a third party, and a third party with authority to do all kinds of things to you, like take away your assets and put you in prison and do all kinds of things like that.
And give the broad half.
At the time, or more than half in a lot of cases. At the time of its dissolution, at the time when you're dissolving the... So, I mean, my contract with my publisher is like massively detailed. It outlines our obligations to each other. It outlines exactly what's going to happen if I fail in my obligation to them or they fail in their obligation to me in this way, that way, and the other way. And it lays out in exquisite detail what's going to happen if I decide I want to dissolve the contract before it expires, or if they do, who owes who what, blah, 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 right? That's what I think libertarians would maybe want to see marriage replaced with, is an actual contract where the terms, where people can negotiate what kind of relationship, what kind of marriage they want to have, and that you're held to those terms, so that you don't have this idea that, because you're a multimillionaire and some woman married you and stayed married to you for like 8 months, now she's set for life.
Right.
It's absolutely ridiculous the way some of the decisions that get made, where you have millions of dollars being paid out to women who were married to somebody for months or a couple of years. They don't have any kids, but they became accustomed to being,
they became accustomed to being gold-digging whores.
Yeah, no, there's an epidemic of gold-digging whores out there, people, and nobody's addressing it.
Right, exactly. No, it is. It's true, but that's where, though, I'm going to be doing Joe Rogan's podcast really soon. Actually, he just tweeted out the feminist video, and I'm going to send him a message. You don't want this kind of heat. Like, I don't think he realizes the kind of crap that I get for this stuff. It's one thing when you're kind of like a pot-smoking libertarian, but it's the second people know you're more Christian. It's like, oh, this actually comes from real discrimination.
I'm an atheist. I had no idea you were Christian. Goodbye.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that's the thing. I don't make any spiritual arguments. I make the physiological arguments like I did sexually. Yeah. But I do think, if we're going to be honest about the conversation, we separated marriage now into this whole, well, marriage is a human right. I don't think gay marriage is any more of a human right than straight marriage is a human right. I don't think marriage is a human right. I don't believe it's a human birthright. So you have to go, okay, so we're talking about the law. First off, people who don't even have an understanding of Schoolhouse Rock and the Supreme Court and their ability to create legislation. Hint, they don't. Why do we recognize marriage in the country? And that was because before federal government, before state government, before municipal government, they wanted the central building block to the American way of life to be the nuclear family. Mother, father, children. They saw that as the source of stability and the source, the fabric of it. Yes. So that's why marriage was recognized. That's why it's always been in a man and a woman in this country. And then if we can change that, that's fine. But again, I think it's important for people to recognize and not be disingenuous that they weren't any more hateful than people now who are talking about an income base. That's what bothers me, is when people are dishonest about a conversation just to score a political point.
Well, one of the things about marriage, because marriage, like monogamous marriage or polygynous marriage, no matter where you go in any culture historically where there has been sort of a norm of monogamous marriage, even if it allowed polygyny, right? One husband, several wives. There were responsibilities placed on the man, and the reason why this was a contract that required fidelity on the part of the woman, but not necessarily, or not as it wasn't, the punishments weren't as severe if a man stepped outside of his marriage as if a woman did, is because the whole purpose of marriage was to identify the father of a given child and hold him responsible for that child.
Right.
And you can't know that you're holding the right man responsible if the woman is out banging the football team.
It's true.
Right? You can't identify the
There was no
father.
Maury back then to figure it out.
Yeah, no, there really wasn't. And I mean, like, and even now, some states like California, they could give a shit about DNA, right?
That pesky DNA.
They'll hold anybody responsible.
Same thing with
even
restrooms.
yeah,
Slap on
even
a strap on, and you go in the ladies' room.
well, I could always go to the ladies' room with a strap on.
Oh gosh, I'm sure actually quite a few of them are now. That's probably the main problem. Well, it's so funny how far it's become. It's beyond parody, the feminist movement, where we were at the Feminist Film Festival, and so last year they had gender neutral bathrooms. That was the huge outrage when I started my radio show.
Mm-hmm.
We just hit the 1 year anniversary. It was in Philadelphia. All government buildings would be gender neutral. And what was the argument coming from the Christian right? We're ignorant. They're going, well, listen, this is not the end game. They're going to want transgender people to go into any bathroom they choose. And I'm not comfortable with my daughters being there because men naturally are more sexually predatory in nature. We can acknowledge that when it comes to women. And if given the opportunity, you can create a more problematic scenario. So that's what they said. Now the push is gender neutral is actually discriminatory. But they don't want it to be called men and women's rooms. So at this feminist film festival, they consulted the trans community.
Oh, right.
I picture
masculine
I picture like this table like, I am the woman with a dick. What I say goes. This will be the legislation. So they consulted with them and are like, well, we have a gender neutral restroom, and then we have a male identified restroom and a female identified restroom, which as far as I know means you go into whatever you want at whatever time that you want and drop bombs. And I'm going like, this is just so purposeless. But it's because it's a war on culture and words and psychology to ensure that they can decide where the narrative takes place.
Well, one thing I will say is that there really isn't any evidence out there that shows that girls and women are going to be in any kind of danger using a unisex bathroom, a gender neutral bathroom where men are going in. I mean, you even look at the propensity for women, say they're at a hockey game or something, and the lineup for the ladies' room is really long, and they just zip into the men's room. The men are standing there peeing right in front of her, and she goes and she uses one of the stalls, and out she goes, and nobody touches her, and nobody even gives her a hard time.
Yeah, but we're uncomfortable.
Yes, you're uncomfortable being around a woman in a restroom. You're not feeling predatory. You're feeling uncomfortable. And when you look at these small,
I'm just talking from a male rights perspective. We're uncomfortable, and I would imagine women would be when a man comes in.
No, I've never been like because
most
in a ladies' room, you're not peeing in front of people, right? It's all stalls.
You are if it's CBGB's. It's just a bathroom in the middle of the room.
All right, that's weird.
This is a punk rock venue that closed down in New York City. That's like these, whenever you go to these rock venues, just like a stall, basically where people shoot up heroin and get busy. Sorry, continue.
Nice, yeah. It's just the secondary use as a toilet, right?
Yes, pretty much. Yeah. It's
multi-purpose room.
Yes,
social,
it's toilet queer. It's questioning. Well, that was another thing too. It seems like the feminist movement now is entirely. It's not at all about women's rights. I don't know how the fat shaming thing got in there. The body, that's the big movement now too. Now fat phobia is a phobia.
Okay. If you go back to that iconic prohibitionist poster, right? Lips that touch liquor will never touch ours, right? And you look at all of those women. No men are beating down their doors to put their lips on those women.
No.
Right? And yet they're trying to use their sexuality. And at that time, because everybody was paired up in lifelong marriages, right? And there were very, very few ways a man could get access to sex without actually marrying somebody who was accessible to him, which may have meant, them looking like these women. His wife looking like these women, because that's all that's left after all the other men have had their pick, and he's got this little small pool of women who are available to him. You can sort of see that they want to use their sexuality as a political bludgeon.
Yeah.
Lips that touch liquor will never touch ours. Now, the entire idea that there's such a thing as an unattractive woman, a sexually unattractive woman, means that those women, and often they're the more politically minded women, more politically motivated women, they can't use that, right? And I think they really resent it.
Yeah, well,
They
my
cannot use their
wife.
sexuality to get what they want.
Well, that's what my wife has talked about a lot with that catcalling thing, and we did that that parody video. She said women who complain about compliments are generally ugly women who've built it up, and she can't say it because she's very pretty, and so people just think she's a bitch. She's like the sweetest, volunteered with special needs kids, has helped them for 4 or 5 years, just the sweetest person ever. She says usually it's women who didn't get a lot of compliments, and so since they had never gotten a compliment, they built it up as something evil, because that's the only way to process it. And then when they get it, then they have to try and be consistent with what they've put out there. Because she goes, when a guy says, hey, I love your dress, or hey, looking great, sweetheart. She goes, now if a guy goes, hey, I'll tell you what I do to you in the bathroom. She's like, yeah, that's a problem, but it's very rare. She goes, but a compliment, I never feel uncomfortable. I never feel threatened, and I don't know any women who do.
No, I actually think that just after watching, I watched a Google Hangout between Rebecca Watson and Jen McCrite, who are
so familiar,
atheist skeptic.
I don't know.
Elevator Gate.
Atheists, that's the problem with it. Even if you're an atheist, they're so obnoxious sometimes. Go ahead.
Oh, yeah, but I mean, like, so there's Rebecca Watson and Jen McCrite, feminist atheists, and P.Z. Myers, who is sort of like this creepy, older, kind of, he's got serious one good man syndrome. Right? Like where he's the only man who actually understands women, and I'm going to surround myself with all these young women, and they're going to adore me because I understand them. But essentially, when I watched these two women talking about being catcalled, here's what it sounded like to me. Oh, you get catcalled? Oh, let me tell you, I get catcalled all the time. I am that hot that I get catcalled.
Exactly.
Oh, you? Yeah, no, me too. I am so hot too. I can't even get my paper off the front porch in the morning without getting catcalled. Right? Yeah. It's humble bragging. It's humble bragging.
Oh, it's ridiculous. Absolutely. Well, also, let's be honest here. That original catcalling video, every single dude was black. That's a cultural thing. Now, it's a cultural thing. Doesn't mean it's racism. I have guys come out when I wear my glasses, okay, because I'm a big white guy, and I have this kind of classic haircut. I've always had the same-ish haircut, glasses, and I wear a blue shirt. I will tell you this. I have gotten at least 10 times in my life, hey, man, you look like Clark Kent. Doesn't that motherfucker look like Clark Kent? All the time. And I was like, yeah, I get it all the time from black guys. And I find it funny, and it doesn't bother me at all, but it's a cultural thing. Same thing in church. I attended an all-black church. White people in church don't say a lot. In black churches, come on, preach. They're just more vocal.
Oh, yeah.
But they don't want to acknowledge that cultural difference in the video.
They're more socially assertive. They're essentially, I was really amazed at how that kind of seemed to have gotten past these feminist people, because they never want to appear racist.
Right.
Who produced this video that every single person who was making a comment and was also on camera was black. When you actually look at that, and I think that there probably was a disproportionate amount of just social interactions. Good morning, hey, mommy, looking good, blah, 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 right? Have a nice night, the whole bit.
A couple were creepy, granted, but a lot of them were just compliments. Like, you have a good day, miss.
They were just, when you look at the difference between white culture and black culture in the U.S. anyway, white people are a lot more reserved out in public. They just are. They're just a lot more they don't want to impose, right? And whereas I think in black culture, interacting with other black people, they're more effusive, and they're more demonstrative, and they're a little louder, and they will talk to people that they don't know. And they do this shaking hands thing, and the high fives and all of that stuff, right? That a lot of white people don't do that stuff, because it seems to be overboard. It seems
it's like the Grand Rapids Film Festival. It's Dutch Reform culture in Western Michigan, outside of the hipsters, and they're known for being very reserved. So that's sort of why you get these ultra aggressive, kind of like hipsters in Austin, right? Because they're sort of projecting this. They're rejecting the lowest unemployment rate and the highest prosperity rate in GDP of Texas from all the oppressive conservatives who've created an economic climate better than like 90% of countries. So they want to go out and smoke their pot and fight
Yeah.
patriarchy. Here's one
Well,
thing
they don't have any more excuse to not have a job. That's the problem.
No, not in Texas. In Canada, you do. That's one thing people understand. When people complain here about like $5 a gallon, I'm going, in Quebec, we did it by liter. I don't think we ever saw less than $8.50 a gallon when you add up the liter prices.
Here right now, it's 90 cents a liter.
Is it 2.5 liters or a?
It's 4 liters per gallon.
4 liters. So that's about the same. It's a little more expensive than here. Here it's about last I checked, 57 a gallon.
Well, 90 cents a liter is actually really, really cheap. I mean, we were just in the Yukon. We drove up through BC and the Yukon and into Alaska last week, and in the Yukon, it was actually in BC. It was more expensive. It was $1.35 or something a liter.
It was way more in Quebec because Quebec has the crazy provincial taxes.
It's the taxes, right? Then we go into the Yukon, which is like, it's got, I think the entire population of the Yukon territory is like 35,000 people, right?
Right.
And so everything is just like grossly overpriced. They have to ship it, miles and miles and miles into the middle of nowhere. And but gas is like cheaper than in British Columbia because of they have fewer taxes.
And it's still
one
way
of the
more.
crazy things about Yukon. 30 or 36,000 people altogether in the territory. 12,000 of them are the workforce. They're either employed or looking for work. 5,000 people work for the government in the Yukon territory.
Wait, hold on. If there's 35,000.
5,000 out of 12,000 workers in the Yukon work for the government.
Yeah. That's Canada for you. I'll tell you what, the pendulum's shifted since I left. We didn't have any access in Quebec at all to private hospitals, and then they opened them up to super hospitals in 2005 with Shawi versus Quebec because so many people were dying. I mean, not to be a downer, but I have an aunt right now who my mom's who's dying. I can't say for sure they would have caught it in the States, but probably, and they certainly would have had better treatment options than there in Montreal.
Well, you have to limit. I mean, it was really easy to pay for universal health care, right? Back when all you pretty much had were like plaster casts, penicillin, and aspirin.
Right.
Right. But the more drugs we have, the more treatments we have, the more diagnostic tests we can do, the more people insist that every effort be made. So, you don't just want a CAT scan, you want a CAT scan and an fMRI, and you want this, that, and the other. And, and then you want all of the available treatments and all of the available drugs and everything else, right? And the best possible care, which is going to be really expensive now. You have to limit access either through money or through time.
Right.
Right. And in the US, it's money. And in Canada, it's through wait lists. So you might wait six months in excruciating pain just to be referred by your doctor to a specialist over a knee replacement. Then you wait another 6 months to a year to see the specialist. And heaven forbid you miss your appointment because then you're waiting another 6 months, right? And then you wait another 8 months for surgery. And by the time you get your surgery, you've been favoring that knee for so long that you've damaged your other knee, and now you need both knees replaced.
Yeah, I have that. I just never fixed anything, so I walk around like a lumbering troll.
You're all gibbled up, are you?
I'm all gibbled up. What's funny is in certain planes of motion, incredibly explosive, like a locomotive, and then in others, it's like, don't touch me. And when you're wrestling, everyone knows how to exploit those weaknesses. Yeah, it's one of those things with Canada. I did a pretty extensive investigation into it because everyone was just praising it here in the States, and it just went unquestioned. Well, Canada has great healthcare, and having experienced so many deaths in the family, in Quebec, granted, is probably worse than the rest of the country because it really is as socialized.
I don't know why, with all the transfer payments we send to those fuckers.
Yeah, Quebec. Yeah, that's why they want us the
They've
separation.
Been on the freaking federal teat for so long. If they're like a teenager, Fuck you, mom. Fuck you, dad. I don't want to live by your rules. I'm moving out. Can I keep the key and bring my laundry?
Although to be fair,
and then I can read a care package, maybe once a week, and can you help me with my rent, and we can share a currency and a military? Would that be okay?
Right. Well, what's funny is they make the argument, and it's almost a very libertarian sort of argument, that their taxes are paying for the 5,000 government employees in the Yukon. That they're disproportionately represented as a tax base. Anyways, we won't get off into the weeds in Canadian politics, but it is interesting, and that's just another thing. It's another human right? Basic healthcare. And when it comes to the States, you say money.
But food's not even a human right. How is it that healthcare is a human right when I have to go to the store and purchase food with money that I earned, right?
Well, people can't imagine the kind of care here in the United States and Canada until you've been here. I was in a hospital and I said, like, this is a hospital. It looked like a hotel. My wife and I have catastrophic insurance, which went up by about 38% with the new Affordable Care Act. Where
Nice.
basically no birth control was covered, nothing, zero was covered up
Yeah.
until 5,000, and they cover 100%. So we've never even come close to the deductible. The whole point was you pay for your own health care and you have an HSA account, so it acts like a cash card. So we get all the cash prices. We negotiate directly with our doctors.
Yeah.
And then if you get cancer, you get hit by a car. We're going to cover all of it. And
Yeah.
so we were perfectly fine with it. The problem is now we have to pay for every harlot who wants their birth control to be tossed onto the taxpayer dime, and every person who's living on a diet of fried Oreos and Snickers bars, because legally insurance companies can no longer deny those people. So there's actually religious exemptions for groups where they can go like, okay, do you agree to not abuse alcohol, not do drugs, and they can come in and randomly test you. But it's so, I mean, people understand that. That's not that expensive, and the care is fantastic. We never even knew care was possible like this in Canada. One thing I'd like to talk about before we go. Okay, so rape culture was a big thing in a panel. Here's one thing. So people are going to get mad, but I don't care at this point. All these women were talking about being raped, and we didn't tape in the panels because they requested that we don't at the Feminist Film Festival. Every woman goes up, my name is Sandra, she and her, my name is so-and-so, he and his. You're like, oh, wait, hold on. And they were all talking about, like, every single one of them had an experience of being raped. They say 1 in 4 women are raped. According to my research, Karen, your chances of being raped in the general populace, or if you're attractive, is not 1 in 4. But if you are an unattractive feminist activist, it's 4 out of 4. What are the chances?
5 out of 4.
Yeah, 5 out of 4.
Happened more than once.
Every single one of these women claim they've been raped. And here's kind of my logic. Wouldn't the odds of being raped, wouldn't they go up the more attractive you are? Like if I'm gonna knock a store over, I'm not going for Family Dollar. I'm gonna go for the jeweler.
Okay, okay. The thing with victims of rape, the demographic that the bulk of them, over 80%, are between 15 and 26. So they are prime childbearing years for women. But the level of attractiveness isn't as big. It's not as much of a risk factor as that specific age range, right?
Because they're all relatively attractive to a rapist.
Well, because they're young, and for whatever reason, when you bring in sexual instinct on the part of men, and you have that sort of history of trauma, childhood trauma, or abuse, or sociopathy developing in a man that makes him prone to perpetrate rape. It's more about the age and behavior, right? So somebody who is very confident, a woman who's young in that risk category, but very, very confident and carries herself very confidently, is going to be less at risk than somebody who kind of seems tucked into herself.
And prettier women are more confident. But there's still a reason for weight classes. And I'm not convinced that men see a 250-pound purple-haired feminist as easy prey. I mean, the only way, I'm just saying this, if I were a horrible person, right, and I've heard rape as an act of power and not a no, it still is a sexual crime.
It is.
And the only way I'm able to rape someone like that, as a guy, assuming I'm just a morally vapid human being, right, assuming I'm not saying it, okay, the only way I can rape someone is if there's another guy with a gun to my head who's going to rape me unless I do it. I just don't, the hydraulics don't work. And I'm not saying at all that all these women are lying, but when you get into these groups of people who don't look like women, who are very unattractive, who have made their entire life about women's issues, it seems like the rape chance goes up 100%.
Well, I think it does, but I think for reasons that, how they define rape, and when you have actually an advisor, right, with the Women's Center at a university, essentially telling a student, I think this happened at Amherst, telling a student that if you had a sexual encounter while you were intoxicated and you regret it, then you were raped.
P&V, they call it.
Yeah.
P and V. For those of you
P
who
in V,
P in
PIV.
V.
PIV is always rape, okay?
Yes. Well, Lena Dunham. That's a perfect
Oh,
example.
pebbles in vagina.
Yes, exactly. Putting pebbles in her little sister's vagina. For those of you who don't know, we actually tracked when she came out with that story. It wasn't too hard to do the math, and I tracked down someone who may or may not have been accused of it, and this person had kids and was not at all. Was like, there's just no way. I don't want to talk to anybody.
The Barry, you mean?
Well, that's not the real name. But if you look up
Yeah.
in Treasurer of College Republicans and during
Yeah.
her time, and it's pretty easy to figure out. And I felt really bad for this guy.
Oh, yeah.
Because she didn't even say it was really. She talked about Xanax and wine and muscle relaxants. Once she said Xanax, another time she said muscle relaxant. She peed in a parking lot, and then he touched her down there. And she's like, oh, and then she said she saw the condom in a plant. And the next day her friend was like, I think you were raped. What? No, really? Here's a good another example. If the condom is on a plant, you're both on muscle relaxants and beer. Okay?
Yeah.
Most guys don't want to rape a woman. That's not what they set out to do. No. Isn't it more plausible that maybe you were both just completely blottoed and he didn't put on the condom properly or he forgot? Isn't that more likely than he was like, see, I'm going to rape this boy-looking little broad? Yeah,
no, I think essentially what tends to happen is that any negative sexual experience or sexual experience that they feel negatively about after the fact, they'll figure out a way post hoc to rationalize that it was non-consensual. And the moment that you start essentially saying, and this is what feminists seem to, like when you have George Will having his column pulled from the St. Louis Dispatch or whatever, because he wrote an article saying if two equally drunk people who got drunk equally voluntarily make the equally stupid decision to have sex, both of them, with each other.
Yeah.
Right? It can only be considered rape of the woman, and the man can only be considered a rapist because of sexism. That's the only reason why we would call him a rapist and her a victim, is sexism.
Otherwise, I've been raped.
Oh, God, I've been raped so many fucking times in so many ways. And, I just thoroughly enjoyed the experience.
Yeah, so, I know.
I'm planning my next vacation at the Rape Shack. But yeah, no, and my boyfriend, he's like, I rape him constantly. It's like,
he's powerless against your rape powers.
He is. He's totally like his 6 feet, 250 pounds, gigantic refrigerator framed body. He's helpless. I could just pin him down and have my way with him. But, like they have defined it in such a way that
but by the way, that is shocking, by the way, what we're talking about, just so everyone out there who's going to try and pull this, everyone talks about this way, and everyone behind closed doors, you're not allowed to say it on media, act like just shut up and try it. Just stop acting like you're offended, because everyone has had this kind of a conversation or made this kind of a joke with their friend when they're talking about rape culture and maybe having had a little too much wine with their spouse. Let's just stop with the feigning offense. It's just such BS, because I know there are going to be some people here who are going to be so upset with you.
There was this woman wrote an article, I think it was on Feminists, might have been Jezebel. She essentially said that her first sexual encounter with the man that she married would technically be considered rape because she was intoxicated, right? And yet she really enjoyed it and she ended up marrying him. And I'm thinking, like, so now we are defining criminal acts subjectively through the lens of the feelings of the perceived victim.
Right.
Right? And not through the objective lens of what was done and how was it done.
Yeah.
Right? But we're at this point in feminist discourse where a woman's intoxication absolves her of responsibility for any decisions that she makes. So her consent is vitiated just automatically.
Yeah.
As if she was a child, as if the moment she drinks a little too much, she's now a 10-year-old child who is legally not able
we have some
to
stories
sex.
about Gay Jared having a little too much to drink. He's a smaller man, and
but a man's intoxication actually increases his culpability.
It's true.
right? Because your intoxication
What you did in my bathroom, gay
does
Jared?
not absolve you of
I thought we were going to talk about it, Steven.
your behavior. So, sorry, go ahead.
No.
Gay Jared?
Well, it's funny. We actually went to go. Can we tell the story, or is your
Do
dad
it.
going to hear it and get mad?
No, we're so far. No one's listening anymore. We're talking. I can hear an echo.
Actually, you'd be surprised as to how like the Harrison Green mom was a 3-hour something interview. The average listener time was like 36 minutes.
That's why you just got to leave.
Which
little
doesn't seem
Easter
like a lot,
eggs.
but considering that traditional television and radio is like an average 18-minute, like that's crazy
And
for
no
the
tits
web.
showed up.
No tits showed up. Not a
So-
lot of tits. No, Jared, it's fun enough. We went to go see Slapshot at the theater where they hosted the film festival.
Excellent. I
And-
like that movie.
That's a movie. I was sitting there going, oh my gosh, could you imagine if they just put this on the screen while they were just doing the Feminist Film
You
Festival?
thought the theater was on fire. People fleeing.
Your wife's a dyke. I know. They would have been so upset with it. They would have been just weeping in the aisles. And we even talked to the guy who worked at that theater. We were like, hey, remember us? We were here for Slapshot. This guy had too much to drink. He's like, oh, yeah, this is different than that. Because it's a theater that just happens to be hosting the event. And, Jared is lighter. You say your boyfriend, sorry, not husband, sorry, Trigger, is 250. Well,
he's
my
about
friend Gerald there that night was he's about 240. Played football at Notre Dame, and I'm about 225, and Jared 140. And oh no, wait, that's a different night.
That's a different night.
That's a different night. Every time we've gone out, and I'm not like a big drinker at all. Like I've never actually been hungover in my life. Probably because I don't really drink. I don't like getting drunk, but I enjoy beer. I enjoy
miserable
craft
feeling.
beer.
You sip. You're a sipper like me.
Yeah, I just like beer. I just genuinely like beer, but I don't really like getting drunk. And as a Christian, I try not to lose my sense of judgment. But while I'm fine, gay Jared was not. He was in an entirely different world than I was. And
I was just trying to be a man, Steven.
He was trying to keep up
with
with
the boys.
you freaking big boys.
you know what killed him? Was at Slapshot, and I went to the bathroom, and I got us both beers. Like, okay, last beers of the night. And he got them while I was at the bathroom. So now we have 4.
Oh dear.
And they didn't realize it.
And they were full pints. This is craft beer, so you're talking like 6.5%, 7%. And I'm
Oh
like,
yeah, no, you can't waste that.
no, Jared. So, you
The first half of the movie was spectacular. I'll say that much.
Slapshot?
The first half,
He
spectacular.
doesn't know what Augie Oglethorpe looks like. All right. Well, let's just
Here's the thing, Jared. Okay, just take my advice. Okay, because you can't just like suddenly out of the blue just abuse your liver. You can't do it. It's just going to hand you divorce papers and say fuck you, right? So what you have to do is you have to sort of it's like an abusive relationship, right? You have to kind of ease into it, right? So you feed it a few drinks and like, oh honey, I didn't mean it, and then I'm sorry, let me buy you some flowers, you can eat an avocado
And then
and
you
you'll
rape
feel
your
better,
liver.
right? And and then the next time you just push it a little more, you smack, and then you're like, oh honey, but you made me do it. And then,
Next
okay,
thing you know,
and you
your
work
cow's
your
with
way
a
up,
cup
and
of
you just
Folgers.
you really train that fucker. You train it, and then eventually you can be like a 5'7" woman like me, who weighs 150 pounds only because I have like extremely high bone density. Other than that, I like have no ass and no legs. And you can like drink like a fucking Viking, and not even get drunk.
Jared,
You
don't
can
take this advice. You're an
start
innocent
Where
man.
was this manual when I
You
needed
can
it?
start drinking like at 10 o'clock in the morning, and you can just go all day, like 4 bottles of wine through the course of the day,
Alcoholism in Canada
And-
is very common, just so you
and
I've talked to them
not
about
get
it.
drunk.
Yeah, people drink a lot in Canada, though.
I do.
Well,
I mean, they do.
Just made it so personal.
I remember they asked that question to Andrew Breitbart when he was on with Martin Bashir, and he said, "What's your relationship like with alcohol?" And Andrew just said, "Why are you asking me this? I don't understand. Why? What does that have to do with Acorn?" And it was just right away they tried to paint him as a drunk, and I remember talking with him about it, and I said, "Andrew, I mean." He liked to have a beer, so he was never an alcoholic at all. But I was like, in Canada, it's just another Tuesday.
Yeah, no.
Yeah, which I wasn't fond of.
I even go to my doctor. I just was at the doctor yesterday because, they make you do a physical when you're my age. It's on a yearly basis, which is like complete bullshit. But, and they're asking about my alcohol consumption. I was honest about it, and I thought, oh my God, here comes the lecture. I smoke and I drink. I drink too much, technically, according to all the little lists. I'm an
Right.
alcoholic, even though I can take it or leave it, depending. And, they didn't say a word.
That's
think
one
we're
thing
so used to
too.
it.
That goes with the social justice warrior deal, the addiction, the
Mm.
lack of responsibility. I'm not. I mean, I get that people have a proclivity toward it, but considering it, putting it in the same category as AIDS or cancer. And I had a person once talking about saying, well, alcohol addiction, and I asked them. I said, okay, so someone who drinks every day, alcoholic. I said, okay, so someone who doesn't drink every day, but when they drink, maybe they have more drinks, alcoholic. I said, okay, someone who let's say doesn't drink at all, doesn't even like drinking, but at Thanksgiving and Christmas, because family brings out the wine to not be rude, he drinks. And they were like, well, he's being pressured. He's doing something. He's alcoholic. I said, you're a crazy person. I can't talk to you. Everyone is an
No,
alcoholic.
like honestly, I think that the test of alcoholism is, can you be around alcohol and not drink it, right? There,
That's
I
an
think it
interesting
was
test.
like my stepson, because I have had two stepsons. I have one now. Um, my younger stepson passed away a few years ago.
Oh, I'm sorry.
But my older stepson, he would come for the summers. They would both come for the summers, and he was old enough to drink. At least in Canada, he'd come up
Right.
from the U.S. and he'd be like, "Oh yeah, I get to drink. I don't have to pay somebody to buy me alcohol. I can go into the store and get it myself." So
Right.
he gets this bottle of peppermint schnapps because
Ah,
I know,
that's
it's
such a
like
Canadian thing too.
it's disgusting.
And by the way, I never touched a drop until I was 22, just because I hated the Canadian culture about like kids were getting hammered and sick, and peppermint schnapps was the one of choice.
Oh yeah, and so he buys this, and he and his friends drank about, I don't know, half of it. So I'd have this bottle of peppermint schnapps in the cupboard above the stove, and I'm thinking to myself, because I'm going through a divorce, and I'm hitting the sauce a little more than I would have liked, and I'm thinking to myself, as long as that half bottle of peppermint schnapps is there, and I never feel the urge to drink it, when there's nothing else in the house, I never feel the urge to drink it. I'm probably okay.
I don't know if that's scientific or not. So I
I'm
don't.
pretty sure it's scientific. I have a highly analytical
We still
mind.
have liquor from our wedding 3 years ago that I've
Oh my
never
God, send
touched.
here.
Yeah. Well, like Kahlua and whatever the vodka is, stuff like we just had it, and I just don't like the taste of it. I've never liked it, so it's like it's been there for a long time. I probably buy one bottle of bourbon a year, and it usually goes to guests.
I've never
So
had bourbon.
you've never had bourbon?
No, I've
Is that
never
not
had.
common in Canada?
It's like you can find it, but like in the entire time that I've worked as a server in restaurants, I've never had anybody order bourbon.
Well, I mean, for any kind of bourbon, it's just a form of whiskey, with a
Yeah.
higher percentage of corn.
Oh,
So it's like the opposite of rye. It's tends to be less dry, tends to be sweeter, and I usually get Buffalo Trace because it's like, oh, I know guests who know bourbon like it. I don't know the difference between that and cheap bourbon.
yeah.
But yeah, it's weird. We have it, and I'm always like, we have this like kind of little bar set up. I'm like, you want it? Yeah, we got this for you, and I never touch it.
Yeah.
We got way far off the feminist thing. So all
We
right,
did kind of.
yeah, well, this is why we have the web extended version. You inform the audience on terrestrial, and they feel like they've learned something, and then here they learn nothing. So
Except for things that they never wanted to know in the
about
first
Gay
place.
Jared and Slapshot at the Feminist Film Festival Theater.
Like I just so was the woman who gave you the finger
Yeah.
was she one of the feminists from, or was she just
Yes.
outside? She was?
She was, yes. And I will say this, of course we invited them on the show, and they don't want to come on. And
No.
the one sort of Rachel Maddow, the one who looked like my twin in the video, was pretty nice. And I get the sense that you could probably at some point maybe reason with her.
Yeah, have a conversation at
You
least.
can have a conversation, but when everything's like a trigger, I mean, they got, she kicked me out because it said Sean King's white. So probably not a lot of reason there. It's just one of those things. It's like, well, birth certificate, police records, pictures.
Mhm.
Unless his mom was a total whore, which is how he threw her under the bus to save his own hide.
Yeah.
He's a white guy. And
Yeah.
they kicked me out. And then one thing, too, I always want to clarify. People are like, you were so... No, I wasn't offended at the Jesus thing. My point is, out of everything in that video, a picture of tranny Jesus menstruating in a diaper is the one thing that people are like, oh, I wish I would have known that was coming up because it's kind of gross. That was the reaction from most people.
But there's no trigger warning for it.
No, and I don't think my point is, I'm not offended at all. It's just
There shouldn't
ironic.
be a trigger warning for anything, Like if we're gonna have like the Madonna with the elephant dung on it and the piss Christ and all of this stuff, right? We're gonna have cartoons of Muhammad, which we should.
But they
and
don't.
and we don't need trigger warnings for those. Um, then why what like I don't understand, like, trigger warnings, number one, they don't work, right? Because the trigger warning itself, if the content of the article is going to trigger somebody, then the trigger warning itself describing the content is going to trigger them, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's going to remind them of the reasons why they don't want to read the article, and
Right.
so they're going to be reminded of the reasons why they don't want to read the article. But there's not a whole lot of evidence indicating that, at least as far as things that are written, they get processed in a different part of the brain. They go through a different way of being integrated, than things that you see, things that you smell, things that you hear. And there's really no evidence that text, even that would remind you of an event, would necessarily bring on a panic attack from PTSD. So, it's I
Yeah.
just don't understand the whole. I mean, they don't work, they're counterproductive. And on top of that, there's plenty of evidence saying that if you do have PTSD, the treatment that you're going to get if you go to a mental health professional is going to be exposure therapy.
Yeah, it's going to be far trigger. It's kind of, that's always what I ask
It's
about the idea.
it's go and do the thing, expose yourself to the thing that triggers you until it no longer triggers you.
Well, I had a stand-up
Right?
bit about that, about homophobia. I was like, let's break down the
Mhm.
word homophobia. I'm not afraid of homosexuals. I don't know anyone. I've never met anyone who's afraid of homosexuals. And if it's a clinical phobia, like, how do you get someone over it? Is it like when I was a kid, I was a spider, I had to touch one?
Yeah.
I touched the Richard Simmons Sweat to the Oldies Volume 4. I can't! That was it's like really, that's the thing. We just throw around phobic. Now fat phobic. No one's afraid.
No one's scared of fat. They just don't like it. They don't like the way it looks, you know.
It's not
And
sexually attractive.
well, no, it's not sexually attractive. And then there are certain things that trigger a disgust response in people, like fecal matter, whether it's human, your own, or somebody else,
Unless you're
particularly
German.
somebody else's vomit, anything that is has the potential to be unhealthy, right?
Yeah, fat.
To come into contact with. And like fat people, and this goes for both men and women, when you're looking at fat people, you're not, even if you're not disgusted by them, you're not going to feel sexually attracted to them because they're not really a safe bet genetically.
Yeah. Well, that's always why I say it's, these one thing, and I'll leave with this. One thing that feminists have taken is something that is so beautiful, which is the purity of male attraction, and they vilified it.
Oh,
As a man, this is the polygraph. It's the veritable weather stick of beauty. It doesn't care about your race. It doesn't care about how much you make. It doesn't care about societal circumstance. It doesn't care from where you come. Either it's a yes or a no answer, and you can't cheat the test. And that's just the way guys are wired. And every guy has different tastes. But women take that and act as though it's feminists take that, and act as though that's a vile thing. When I'm thinking it brings everyone together.
What drives me crazy too is that there's a sort of a saying in the pickup artist community and the sort of the
and that goes too far the other way, but yeah,
hardcore traditionalist community, right? So I mean, because there's a lot of crossover in, at least in their sort of how they analyze things, how they think about, how they think society and people work, what makes them tick. That men love women, women love children, children love puppies, right? And that the weakest bond in the family is the one between the father and the child. The father is actually primarily attached to the wife, right? That's the strongest bond in the family. And so you do have, and you do see this, like when a family breaks up, the woman wants to take the children generally, and the man just wants to keep his family intact, right? Like the 60 to 70, sometimes more, depending on where you are, percent of divorces are initiated by women, and she wants to leave with the children, and the husband does not necessarily want her to leave at all.
Yeah.
But there is this idea that male sexuality, male sexual response is dehumanizing to women. It objectifies them and it turns them into non-humans or non-persons. And one of the really, really awful things about that is, like, that's the kind of way people are encouraged to look at other ethnic groups in the months or years preceding genocides,
Mm-hmm.
right? That they're subhuman, right? They're just objects. They're either objects to use or objects that get in the way of things, right?
Right.
That are standing in your way or are harming you.
And
But
important, it usually starts with vilification.
it really does. And so essentially, we're seeing rhetoric now, and we've always seen this rhetoric around men of other cultures, right? So you see right-wing Christian conservatives who will say, look at those fundamentalist Muslims and how poorly they treat their women. They sexually degrade them and they beat them. And you see fundamentalist imams say, look at those Americans and how they treat their women. They beat them and they sexually degrade them, right? And they're each vilifying each other based on how they treat their women.
Mm-hmm.
Right? This is probably the first era in the entirety of history where we've been hearing those kinds of things about our own men, right?
Yeah.
About our own men, right? We always depended on our own men to protect us from those other bad men over there, right? But now we have this discourse in the media and in academia and in government that it's our own men who are out to, rape and batter and mistreat and harm and enslave
Right.
their own women. Um, this is like the king, the epitome of how you dehumanize the men around you is you say they mistreat their women. That's how you convince Americans to kill Muslim men they've never met and Muslims to kill American men they've never met. And they don't know and they have no idea whether, these men are good men or bad men.
Right.
That's how you do it. That's how you convince them, is saying they not only are coming to rape and harm our women, but they're so bad they mistreat their own women. And we're saying this about our own men.
Well, and I think that ties into, and that's always what I talk about, it's the secular progressivism is a religion. People don't want to accept that. Secular progressivism acts like a religion, and they vilify particularly men. I mean, that's why you have same thing from secular progressivism. Well, you can't disagree with me, you're a racist. Well, you can't disagree with me there, you're a homophobe. You can't disagree, you're a transphobe. You
Or
can't disagree, you're a
misogynist.
sexist and misogynist. And what's so funny is, the racist thing was the biggest card used. And I wrote about this. Bitch will be the new N-word. I wrote it before Hillary Clinton came out and announced. I said it's going to be the day where all racists all of a sudden turn into sexists. And now that we know Hillary Clinton probably isn't going to be the nominee, it's not as prevalent, that rhetoric. They were really pushing the war on women. And it has died down a little bit, but they really brought it back full bore because they were going to argue, well, you either vote for Hillary Clinton or you're a sexist, just like you either vote for Barack Obama or you're a racist.
What drives me crazy about all of that rhetoric around women and politics and all of that, like, okay, so you have, you, Miss Feminist Stephen.
Yes.
Who, as a feminist, who would you rather have deciding on abortion rights? Would you rather have Michelle Bachmann, Sarah Palin, and Ann Coulter? Or would you rather have Jon Stewart, Al Franken, and Joe Biden?
Gosh, I'd rather
Who,
jump
as
off
a feminist,
bridge.
would you want to represent your
exactly.
feminist
It just
views?
depends on who shares your views.
And like the entire idea that there is that say the war on abortion rights, right? And I can see that there's a healthy debate about abortion rights, what restrictions are required, how difficult should it be to obtain one,
Sure.
all of those things, right? And I'm pro-choice with caveats myself, and I can totally understand the pro-life position, right? But
Sure.
feminists want to frame the entire thing as old white men who want to control women's bodies, when in reality, more women than men in America are pro-life. More pro-choice women than pro-choice men want reasonable restrictions on abortion, right? So it's and if you go to any abortion clinic and look at the protesters, I can almost guarantee you 99 times out of 100, the women are going to outnumber the men among those protesters.
Yeah, my wife has worked at she's worked at crisis pregnancy centers, just volunteered.
Yeah.
And even then, if you're pro-choice with caveats, you should go, well, that's a great thing because you're providing women with options and educating them, which Planned Parenthood doesn't do. They're all about the upsell. They're all about the more expensive abortion.
Oh,
Hopefully
how much abortion is going to help you?
Right.
It's
well, they actually want to measure the baby as later because it's more expensive the bigger the baby is. We actually had someone on the show. Yeah. And they'll actually try and upsell you for services while you're in the stirrups. Abby Johnson was on the show and talked about it. But now they've switched from safe, legal, and rare to free abortion on demand, period. That's the new feminist rage. And what's funny is with Hillary Clinton, and I found it very peculiar that they were passing up Bernie Sanders flyers at this feminist festival because I think it's just, they'll say it's sexist. It's just that Hillary Clinton comes across like such a bitch to women. Yeah. Women use that word. Yeah, to anyone. And that's why I said if it's Hillary Clinton, Carly Fiorina beats her. If it's Biden or something, then it's sort of negated, and I still think Fiorina would be a formidable candidate. But it's just Hillary Clinton is the perfect example of someone who should bring great shame on women, who didn't really accomplish anything on her own and stayed with a husband who clearly didn't care about her, who treated her like crap, actually helped silence women who her husband actually sexually assaulted so she could become a senator when she got an apartment in New York for 2 weeks. And now it's just her turn to run for president because she was married to a president.
Well, the only thing that I even remotely respect Hillary Clinton over is the fact that she came right out and said, I'm married to Bill. I like being married to Bill, right? And I'm going to stay married to Bill.
Yeah.
Right? At least she was honest about that one thing, right? But, as far as how the National Organization for Women and other feminists completely screwed over Monica Lewinsky, portrayed her as a temptress who seduced Bill Clinton, and he couldn't
Jennifer
help
Flowers.
himself.
I mean, there's a long list.
Oh my
the
God,
Kennedys.
It's absolutely because Clinton would have given them what they wanted regarding abortion.
Right.
And it's like when you look at what feminists are trying to say the pro-life argument is, they're trying to say that pro-lifers don't consider women to be full human beings,
right,
deserving of rights. When you don't have to convince pro-life people that women are human because they already know it.
It's the only issue where pro-life people have any kind of a say in any medical procedures because regardless of whether you believe it or not, they believe that's a life. They have no interest in...
They believe that's a human being.
Right.
So they believe that there are two human beings involved, the mother and the unborn child. So you don't have to convince them that the woman is a human being. They know that.
Right.
You have to convince them that the fetus is not a human being. And I don't know that many of them are going to be convinced of that, right? But to actually vilify them as seeing women as subhuman and not deserving of rights and autonomy, physical autonomy, is absolutely ridiculous.
Well, it's also
a complete
true. Women who have abortions are 6 times more likely to commit suicide. The all kinds of ramifications that people don't want to acknowledge.
There's all kinds of, I mean, like I said, pro-choice with caveats, right? One of the caveats is that I would never have one. I look at the kids that I have now, and I think, would I have done that knowing this child now, this 21-year-old young man, right? That I've raised, right? And what he's become, would I be able to live with myself aborting him as a fetus if I had known or had any idea of what he would become? Right. And I just there's just no way. There's no way. I wouldn't be able to do it.
Yeah, I think that's a reason that the psychological effect. That's where actual women actually have PTSD. A lot of women who go through the abortion process, and we want to act like that's not the case, regardless of where you line up. And that's the same reason someone like Hitchens was pro-life. It's not just a bunch of fundamentalist Christians who are pro-life.
No, it's
There's
not.
a scientific argument to be made.
All kinds of atheistic, moral and scientific arguments against abortion. There's just
I feel sorry for those doctors at Planned Parenthood, though, because if you hear the pro-abortion lobby, every woman who comes in to get an abortion was raped, and every woman who was raped looks like those people at the Feminist Film Festival. So the doctor there has a tough night shift when he goes in. We can leave it on. Karen, well, this is your own channel, but I was going to say, so go over to my channel and see the other video. But where's the best place for everyone to find you?
The best place to find me is on YouTube, user/girl writes what, or you can just Google my name, Karen Straughan, Straughan, and yeah, just you'll find something of me that will lead you to the real goodies.
Yes, the real
If you
goodies.
just Google my name, so
Which my dad was a big fan listening to your speak. Listening to your speak. This is where my brain is. It's
Mush back.
Mush back. I had a video go up last night, and I didn't sleep, so I'm running on 48 hours here. But a big fan. Yeah, he was a big fan. I know you said your mom was a Louder with Crowder. Not necessarily fan.
Oh my
but,
God, she misses you so much because, like,
Oh,
you
Sun
used to be
News?
on Sun News on Brian Lilly's show every
No, it was
Friday?
Michael Korn, and you know what?
That's it.
We can talk a little inside baseball about that because I'm friends with a lot of them, and I love what Ezra's doing. But
Mhm.
the guy who ran it was someone who worked on Harper's campaign. I remember speaking with him. The least friendly phone call I'd ever had in my life, and it's very
Oh.
similar to an American conservative cable news network that I spoke with recently, and they had no interest in the internet really sort of growing things in an organic way, and they were banking
Yeah.
on getting the Canadian government to give them a cable license. That was their entire play. And I remember sitting on the
Yeah.
phone going, so your entire play as a conservative, anti-government news network is the government to give you a license so you're next to CBC on the dial?
Well, they did get it.
No,
they
they
did
didn't.
get it. No, they went to court, and court said that the Canadian government could not use their politics against them, that there has to be balance. And so they essentially, but they were bankrupt by then.
Oh, by the time it happened. Well, I think what it
By
was
the time they got the
they
decision.
didn't get it, and then they went through the process to get it, and it would have been a
Yeah.
while before it kicked in, and they weren't able to
Mhm.
bridge that gap. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I missed it because I really liked Sun. When I was there, it didn't exist when I lived in Canada. And that's always
Yeah.
what I find so funny. I talk about this a lot. And then we'll let you go. But we talk in the States, and you have all these podcasts. They go, corporate media, man. I go, okay. I understand where you're coming from. What's the alternative? Government media?
Yeah.
You know, that's what
No,
happens in
okay.
Canada. It's very, very
No.
partisan.
Oh my God, like you look at it like BBC, at least BBC has a mandate that they have to be nonpartisan. They have a mandate. They ignore it
Ish, yeah.
constantly, but they have a mandate. I don't know that there is a mandate for CBC.
No, I don't think there is. Well, it's like, okay, they believe, corporate is big oil and big pharma, which, makes up a small percentage of commercials. But let's say that they're beholden to sponsors. It's
Yeah.
like a mouth guard. It would diffuse the damage because there's so many sponsors to be beholden to all different kinds of people with all different kinds of interests. So it
Yeah.
wouldn't be one message. Whereas government-funded media
Yeah.
is beholden to one
One. Yeah.
source.
No,
And,
you look at it at like CBC Radio. Like there used to be a few good shows. Gzowski used to be interesting a lot of the time. George Gzowski.
in Montreal, we had Tommy Schnermacher was on CJAD. Funny name.
And then there was Rex Murphy, Cross Canada Checkup, right? He was on for years and years and years doing that show. He just did his last show on Sunday.
Oh,
He's gone. And I mean, like, I didn't always agree with his opinions, but one of the things that he did was no matter what your opinion was, if you called in, he would allow you to have your say.
yeah.
And he'd ask, well, why is it that you think that way? Why?
Right.
Explain to me what your reasoning is. And he would allow you to do that.
Right.
He was just very, very good about allowing everybody to express their viewpoint. And so now you're just stuck with fucking Anna Maria Tremonti and Pia Chattopadhyay,
I
right?
don't even know those names. I remember was that Connie Chung? Was she still there? Was she American? Who's the Asian I'm
No,
thinking
he-
of in Montreal?
Oh.
You know who I'm thinking of. She's always on. Asian broad.
Michelle Off? No.
I don't know. All I know is it was awful. It was just
Oh, my
terrible.
Like so many, like Anna Maria Tremonti does The Current, show called The Current on CBC Radio, and she is
I remember Suzuki,
such a
David
flaming
Suzuki.
fucking feminist. And every once in a while, Pia Chattopadhyay fills in for her. And she actually filled in for Steve Paikin, The Agenda with Steve Paikin in Ontario, TV Ontario. She filled in for him for a few shows, interviewing Catherine Young, who's a professor of theology, and she co-wrote
idea.
series Spreading Misandry, Sanctifying Misandry,
Ugh,
and all of that, right?
I can see where this
so
is
she-
going.
No, she's actually she deals with, why are we vilifying men? Like why are we doing this
Oh,
to men?
I thought it was like a sarcastic title.
Yeah, no.
Usually that's what it is. If it includes
it's
misandry, it's like
it's this elderly woman and a gay man who co-wrote this series of books, and people are calling them misogynist, right-wing, freaking Christian.
It's funny.
People,
It's funny.
right?
Misandry. The first time, the only time I realized, the only time I ever heard of it was used like in a derogatory way, like, "Oh, misandry, like that's a real thing."
Misandry don't real.
Right? Yes, exactly.
Hashtag kill all men.
So I'm surprised she's owning it. Good for her. I've never seen that.
Honestly, like I don't tend to use the word misandry because it doesn't come up in the spell check. You know, it right. Says you're spelling a word wrong when you try and type it.
Did you mean to spell rape?
You can spell rape anywhere. Anywhere, anytime, even in a back alley.
That little paperclip will even correct you. You're like,
you can spell it in the snow if you like. But yeah, no, I just I don't tend to use that word. Although, you know, really the only acceptable people to hate now are straight, cisgendered, white males.
Yeah, I don't like to use cis. I just say normal. So, no, I don't care who's offended. Are you saying they're subhuman? No, I'm not. I'm saying it's weird. Karen, thank you so much for being on. Anytime some kind of feminist outrage happens, we'll bring you on the program.
Excellent.
And Gay Jared will get this to you for your channel, and then head on over to my channel where it was a much more, I don't know, professional. Thank you, Karen, so much.
I hate being professional, just so you know.
If you've made it to the end of this, congratulations, you win the internet. But I know it's easier because Karen is cute as a button. You want to see more of this? There's 30 minutes extended interview over there at my channel. Click it or don't, but that means you're probably a dominating patriarchist. I'm just throwing it out there.